right, Matt, we have
Yep.
successfully, I think, made a case for the Bears having more than a puncher's chance in this game because Washington's defense, while fearsome up front,
Yeah.
isn't so good behind it. How would you go about exploiting that?
I think it's a great point. And their defensive line, when you look at what they have, in terms of the roster, you see that defensive front's one of the best in football, right? But they are giving up points. They are giving up explosive plays. And I think Justin Fields should be prepped for this game because of their coverage structure in Washington. A lot of too high coverages, cover two more quarters than the Bears play, but you still get that too high shell a lot. And Justin Fields sees that all offseason in Chicago. So, from an offensive game plan perspective, in terms of their call sheet, they should have concepts ready to attack two deep coverage early tonight and to attack the third level of the field because we saw that last week in the loss to Denver as they were much more explosive on offense. There'll be opportunities to do that again tonight.
Okay, I'm working through this too. Like I'm more confident about the Bears winning this game than even last week against Denver, knowing what Denver had done the week before. But I do have some questions. How do you feel about the idea of them maybe bringing Tevin Jenkins back? And what would be your concerns about playing him in tonight's game, if you have them?
Well, concerns about playing him is probably one, just his conditioning level, right? He hasn't played football for a while. You always worry about that with a player who's been out, is what their conditioning level is at. And can they play with proper technique? Can they make it through 4 quarters of a football game, especially given the matchups he's going to have? Like we just talked about with the Washington defensive front, especially in the interior with Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. Those are really good football players or disruptive players that can change games on any single play. So that's a concern right there is the conditioning standpoint. And also I always say technique because you haven't practiced that in a game-like situation. Even though you have the technique as a professional athlete, you haven't seen it at that speed for a while. And on a short week, that would be my concern, Lawrence. But understand also you want your best players in the football field, especially for this matchup. Like you just said, a winnable game, a game they need to win, a game that would change a lot of things up at Haugh for them coming off, a weekend off if they can win a football game. So you want your best out there, again, given the matchup you have.
I wanted to ask you about something that I heard on the afternoon show yesterday from another expert that coincides with what we talked about after the Justin Fields interception on the pass to Cole Kmet last week.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle Sloter yesterday, the longtime NFL journeyman quarterback, talked about the difference between routes on paper or on the board and routes on the field. That even though you diagram a route and you line up here, you break it here, you end up here, he said the truth is every play's got wiggle room in that regard, depending on the leverage of the defensive back, depending on how you see it. That there has to be an understood adjustment of how to get off the line or knowing that your distance isn't quite what you thought it was going to be from a line of the defense. How do you go about coaching at the NFL level? How do you go about having the wherewithal and the understanding between quarterback and receiver to know that, yeah, you're running this route, but it's not going to be exactly the route that you thought when you broke the huddle?
And you bring up a great point. I say the same thing about defense, too. Everything looks great on the chalkboard until you start playing the football game, right? Because on a chalkboard, everything's perfect. Everything's perfect in walkthrough, too. The defender is going to do this. He's going to play this leverage, like you're talking about, Dan. He's going to give you this space where you can sit the route down and turn a seam route into a curl route. But in a game-like situation, everything changes. To me, that is experience, that is chemistry between a quarterback and a pass catcher in that situation, and that is knowing defensive tendencies and especially specific matchup tendencies. What is this linebacker? What is this safety going to do when we run this route in this situation? What have we seen on tape from Denver in that situation? Are they going to match the tight end with the linebacker or safety? Okay, how's the safety going to play? Is he going to play to the top shoulder or the bottom shoulder? There's a lot of things to look at there, but really it comes down to, in my opinion, Dan, going through those moments together. Going through those moments where you have enough reps that you say, look, this is an end-of-game situation. We are moving the football to win this game, and we have to make this play. And this is what we're betting on based on what we've seen on tape and how our tight end and our quarterback work together. And in that situation, it simply did not happen for Justin Fields and Cole Kmet. It didn't. It didn't. That cost him the football game.
Matt, when they envisioned this defense, it seems to me that they envisioned it kind of as a 4-2-5 because of so
Sure.
much 11 personnel that's being
Mhm.
played. You have Kyler Gordon out there. They have now turned into a 4-3-4 where Jack Sanborn is out there. And I wonder if I want to know two things. One, how do you think it changes the way that a game is called defensively? And two, how do you think it changes the way that the offense looks at the Bears and ways to exploit it, knowing that they're different than what they're supposed to be, just from a lineup standpoint?
Right. Well, if you're talking about having your base personnel in there, a 4-3 front, well, one, that's going to give you extra defenders, in the box to play the run game. Everyone knows that about football. When you have more in the box, you're going to be successful playing the run game. And the Bears have done that this year from a defensive perspective. Where it limits you is at the second level in the passing game in terms of how offenses try to exploit you, especially a defense that is so zone heavy, right? That you can move defenders, you can run clear and replace concepts, you can get linebackers to sit short. And that's what you see a lot on the Bears tape. Force linebackers to expand in their drop and sit short, so they're not gaining depth and getting to the top of the second level. And that's where it can hurt you. Kansas City did that to them multiple times a couple weeks ago, and Denver did the same thing at times where they can, basically scheme the coverage voids they want based on what the Bears' coverage tendencies are, based on the personnel in the field. And the biggest thing in football, and I've always said this from a coaching perspective, is if there's something in front of you, that means there's something behind you, right? And the Bears are going to get a lot of leveled concepts in that personnel. That's what I would do. I'd run a shallow crosser with a deep end breaker behind it, and it's a high to low read for the quarterback. If I can get those linebackers to sit shallow in their drops, there's that window. We saw it with Mahomes. He did that multiple times, like I said. And look, I like the Bears best in a 4-2-5. I think that's how the game is played right now. I think you need speed in the field. And if you want to go man, if you want to disguise zone and then play man, I think you need your 5 defensive backs out there because that gives you the best chance versus today's passing concepts.
That's the next thing that I wanted
to
ask.
That's the problem. Exactly. I agree. You're in a tough spot right now. This early in the season to be that beat up in the secondary, that's a tough spot. And I've always said you can never have too many defensive backs on your 53-man roster because of these situations. One, you need defensive backs for all your special teams units. Those are usually defensive backs and linebackers, but also for your sub packages. And guys get hurt, and they consistently get hurt. And so you need depth. And now the Bears' depth is really, really being challenged. And you're going into a game against a young quarterback. What is this? Will be his 6th pro start, right? 6th pro start, who has, a very, very aggressive throwing mentality. And he wants to push the ball down the field, talking about Sam Haugh from Washington. And he will hold the ball to wait till routes get open. And he will aggressively challenge whoever is in a Bears uniform playing in the secondary tonight.
So let me get your thoughts on this too. I don't know if you were ever put in this position, but the Bears they've in the last 2 weeks have taken 2 guys off of another team's practice squad and have basically had to play him. You've got a safety that clearly has to be knowledgeable about the type of defense that the Bears are playing because you have to throw him in and play him. What type of communication issues are you worried about if you're a new safety, a new corner that's joining a team and playing in a game after being somewhere else 7 days ago?
That's an excellent point, Lawrence. And because outside of the offensive line, the secondary to me is the second unit that needs the most communication, both pre and post snap. I'll tell you a quick story about this. It's a true story. When I was with the Green Bay in 2002, we went out to New England, and our entire secondary was hurt. So I started the football game with 3 other guys we picked up on Tuesday. We picked them up on Tuesday. They worked out up at the facility in Green Bay. We picked them up. We signed them. We played them. Before the game, there was coaches from New England coming over and looking at us, kind of shaking their heads, like, who are these guys, right? And now we won the football game. I think we played really good in the secondary, but it wasn't the same game plan, okay? It was a lot of core concepts that everyone in the NFL runs, whereas quarters, cover 2, cover 3, basic man coverage, a couple pressures that defensive backs weren't really involved in, more linebacker pressure where they just knew, look, I got the outside zone and a fire zone or a man coverage. But everything was reduced. It had to be reduced, Lawrence. It had to. We couldn't go in there with the same game plan with guys that just showed up on Tuesday and practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, walk through Saturday, get in the plane, fly to New England. It's hard to do. It's very hard to do. So you have to limit things and run core concepts. I think the Bears, again, will be very zone heavy tonight. They're going to have to be in this situation. Put two deep over the top to try to limit the explosive plays. Because we talk about the defensive front in Washington and Sam Howell's aggressive throwing mentality. Washington has really good wide receivers with dynamic ability and route running tricks that can create explosive plays down the field. You're going to have to keep the ball in front of you tonight. You're going to have to tackle well. And you have to be much better on third downs. And you have to understand what teams are doing to you. I go back to the touchdown. I think it was Cortland Sutton on Sunday, and it was designed to beat cover two. It's a high-low. You run a middle-of-the-field curl at the linebacker, the Mike linebacker. He has to sit shallow. Now there's no, deep third, really, defender in cover two. Safety sneak gets beat inside. That's a touchdown. You have to know that stuff is coming. You have to. That's how your personnel is built. That's how your coverage structure is built. And the Bears have to be better at that tonight.
Matt, what did you take away from what you saw the Bears do offensively on Sunday?
Well, I think it starts with the quarterback. I thought Justin Fields was really, really good. He was decisive with the football. I thought he threw the ball confidently. He attacked the edges on boot. He took the shots that were available at the third level of the field. And really, throughout the first half and really the first three quarters, thought he took all the throws that were available. The ball was out quick. He was seeing the field fast. I thought the system was set up for him to read it out quickly and get the ball out with speed. It's just the turnovers late in the game. Can't do that on Sundays. Simple as that. You can get away with it in high school. You can get away with it in college. You can't do that on Sundays because you allowed that football team to get back in the game and eventually win the game. Because right now, if you're an offensive player for Chicago, you have to know coming off this last football game that you can score points. You can be explosive. It has to continue. Because until we see someone on the defensive side of the ball in Chicago step up and make a single impact play, things are not going to change. So you're going to have to score points again tonight. Because right now, find me someone on the tape who's stepping up on a third down in a 2-minute situation in the low red zone and making a play for this defense. It's not happening.